This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Welcome to Roots and All, and this interview with Dr. Linda Birkin, the dynamic entomologist and wildlife gardener who stole the show at the recent Talking Plants event with her energetic and informative talk on creating living gardens that welcome all creatures great and small. Find out how she came to champion bugs and how you can join in with her mission to make gardens a haven for wildlife.
I am an entomologist, which means I am an insect-based scientist. So I am interested in insects. I'm interested in a lot of things as well. I actually do have a very broad sort of biological sciences background. I will dip my toe into anything I'm interested in, but by following the things I've been interested in over life, I have ended up in sort of focusing on insects. At the moment, I am currently calling myself a community entomologist. Basically, I want to talk about the whole community of bugs. I don't have a favorite. I don't have a favorite flavor. I don't have a favorite type. Well, I do, but it varies depending on what I've done a weird deep dive on recently. So I want to talk about all the things that are out there that creep and crawl and fly and flutter. And I want to talk to the widest community of people about this as possible because they are a type of creature that is very often underserved in terms of having its cheerleaders. And I mean, I'm wide and I'm hairy. I don't think I necessarily fit as a classic cheerleader, but for bugs, I think it'll work quite well. In terms of slightly more serious things, I've done my time like in academia. I have a PhD. I've worked with universities for the more academic side of things. I've worked as a more outreach sort of person. I worked in the policy sector for a while, looking at kind of wide-scale monitoring schemes that were mostly citizen science driven. So folks recording what sort of insects or birds or other kind of wildlife they have seen, either in a very stratified way, like please go here and do this for this period of time, or in a kind of I'm at a bus stop, I have seen a bird. All that sort of thing. I was interested in potentially coming up with some of my own versions of those sort of projects, which is why I was looking for a PhD in that kind of thing. So I did my PhD in urban pollination services and citizen science. So all about wrangling volunteers to do essentially little slightly strange experiments in their gardens to try and have an idea of what might be going on in terms of pollination. Because if you want to know about garden ecology in any sort of way, it is best if you get the gardeners to go and do it because you have to fill in so many fewer forms for going into all the gardens. And also you could cover a much wider geographic scale in a much shorter period of time, because 15 minutes in the garden for a gardener is not a lot. 15 minutes in everybody's garden from here to Aberdeen is quite a lot for you. So yeah, that's sort of broadly where I ended up. I'm like rolling even further back. I did my master's in entomology at Selwood Park, which is when I decided, right, bugs, this is what I'm focusing on. And prior to that, I did my work and things. I went to Cambridge for my undergrad and did quite a lot of different bits of biology, very few of which involved insects. But I've usually managed to draw a lot of things back from that, because that also included quite a lot of like plant and pathology and microbial elements, which have actually worked very well as an underpinning for studying the little and the crawly.
Yeah, I love the idea that you get the community involved, and if they're gardeners, obviously they're well placed to study their own gardens. A question that I often have for people who work in your kind of field is that obviously citizen science is great, but can there be a problem with identification? Because I gather that's a tricky thing, sometimes even for the trained people.
There can. It depends on what level you want to identify species to. So it sort of depends on the question that you're asking. So for my PhD projects, for example, I was actually looking at the pollination provision itself, not necessarily the beasties what were doing it. So I was primarily getting people to grow broad beans, which are pollinated by long-tongued bumblebees because of the structure of a broad bean flower. Need the bee to be able to physically pull it open and get its face far enough in there to do some pollination. And basically that is bumblebees, big, long tongues, long face. So they were looking at the pollination of that. So I was actually getting them to look at how much pollination had happened and infer from that what the population of those bees must have been like in the garden. I wasn't actually asking people to try and identify to species. Like, I am not I would not consider myself to be a particularly good field biologist anyway. I've got slightly dodgy vision and I'm easily distracted. So when it comes to identifying what is this beastie, I'm much more focused on like the type of insect it is and broadly what it does. So, with solitary wasp, parasitoid wasp, I can identify species and groups and things, but like I'm not really the kind of person who can, pick one out of the air and go, this is a Latin name, and you can tell because of complicated counting of number of legs and antennal segments and things like that. I have done that. A lot of that species ID to real species level involves you having to get the insect in question under a microscope, usually dead, and possibly get its genitals out to have a look at those. This isn't really very compatible with citizen science. People don't want to kill things, and they don't really usually want to look at their genitals. It doesn't always involve genitals. It's just quite a funny thing to say. But yeah, I tend not to focus on really, really specific species things. I tend to be more getting people to understand more about all these different types of insects and life and fascinating things that are happening. And some of them you could quite easily do to species. Some things are very, very distinctive. Some things are not. And I'm quite happy to basically pass that over to people who find more joy in identifying individual beasties. For the sort of citizen science projects I do, or that I say I do at the moment, I'm more doing the outreach kind of stuff. I tend to focus on telling people about the citizen science projects that are either for very easily identified groups. So things like butterflies are generally pretty good because they're quite big and they've got quite distinctive patterns on them. And then some of the other ones like shield bugs or ladybirds, or even the bumblebees, where you have these groups that are, and spiders as well, and woodlice, actually. So they're not actually insects, arachnids and crustaceans variably. But with the community part, I feel I am allowed to grasp all of the scuttly things to my bosom and speak about them. But yeah, so like getting people to be able to identify a few things to species, and then if that tickles their brain and they'd really like to do that, there are ways that you can do that. You can find the specific societies or groups that are really good at that, and you can go on training with them and get involved with them. If you don't really want to do that and you're not particularly interested in that, or you can't do that, like the accessibility, you may not have good enough vision or mobility or things to be able to do that, but actually knowing what type of insect it is, knowing what it's doing, knowing what that means about the habitat around you, and is it doing something for you? Is it doing something that's a problem? Is it just there being its wonderful buggy self in your yard, and now you have a new cute neighbour that has fantastic, nail varnish inspo? You don't need to do it to species level. Just having a wider awareness of what these things are, I think, genuinely does help.
Yeah, I really like that. I like the fact that you don't have to label everything to appreciate it. That's a really good take on it.
Yeah, I get imposter syndrome to myself because I'm not particularly good at the species bit. You'll be talking to people and they are sort of bringing out this whole list of individual types of wasp that they've found, and that's fantastic. And I'm chasing something around my garden with my new phone that I can't work the camera on very well. And I'm I've got it down to mining bee. I'm pretty sure it's one I haven't seen before, and I'm quite pleased about that. But in some ways, I don't feel that I need to know. I like to describe myself, I've always played Pokemon, but I've never really chased shinies. That might be an extremely niche reference, but I think it's quite a good one.
Yeah, and what I really like as well about what you do is that you started out, I went to a talk that you spoke at, Talking Plants, and you showed some pictures of your garden, and it was a collection of pots. And I believe I'm correct in saying that you quite often look at urban gardens, and sometimes I think they can be overlooked as good homes and habitats for bugs.
Yeah, I really do want to focus on urban ecology. I mean, the fact I can't drive is part of this. I can't drive and I don't want to. But no, I do think that in urban environments, your house is the place that you spend the most time, and the surrounds of your house, whether it's a full-on garden or whether it's balcony, windowsill, the narrow bit with the bins in it, whatever's growing up through bits of your drive, the things that you see as you walk to work or walk to the shops, there is so much life here that isn't us, and there is so much of a tendency for that to get forgotten about, or to think that it's something that we have to control, we could control, as I like saying, as a wise and mostly naked fictional man once said, life finds a way. Our urban environments are a weird collection of little different sorts of habitat. There's garden, there's effectively warm cliffs. That's why we have so many seagulls in towns. We've made lovely cliffs without any foxes on them. They love it. It's great. Your garden might represent a completely different collection of microhabitats to your neighbour's garden. So you can have this wide array of different things making use of this space. I think it is very important for people to be able to make that connection to nature that's nearby, to have nature that is neighbours and little mates what you see when you go into the supermarket and things, rather than sort of that it's some thing that's over there in the wildlife sites, that it's somewhere that happens where we must put it out of the way and never interact with it. Yes, there are elements of nature that would mostly benefit from humans not going to bother it, but we're here, we are affecting so many things around us, and if we have a greater, understanding and appreciation for the things that are near us and that our immediate impacts do affect. So if you move the bins, the spider runs away. But you could do things in your garden that make a real and demonstrable impact, positive impact to the creatures that live there. And I think that makes you feel a little bit less hopeless when we are thinking about the wider nature things and the big scale stuff, that you're like, how on earth could we possibly do anything about this? It's like you can start small and you see that a small thing makes an impact, and then a bigger thing, and then a bigger thing, and then a bigger thing. And it adds that connection. It makes it seem less far away and alien and bizarre. And also it's quite fun to watch the weird insect drama happening in your yard.
Doing your outreach work, I'm guessing that it might be easier to engage with children. And as you get further into adulthood, maybe you're a little less tolerant of bugs, but also across the board, some people are genuinely terrified of bugs. So how do you get around that?
Phobias are a real thing. People are genuinely afraid of creatures because little bits of the back of your brain go, absolutely not. But a lot of people, I think, are not so much phobic of insects as just a bit, to use a slightly internet phrase, they're a bit squicked out. They're a bit grossed out by the insects, or there's something that's quite weird, or they're only really used to encountering insects or other invertebrates when they are being problems or are being framed as problems. Like if the only flying things that you really think of, other than maybe the one or two you're allowed to, butterflies you're allowed to that's fine. But if the only other flying things going past your ear are either flies that are in your house walking on your food with their horrible little feet, or wasps or bees that people have phobia responses to because they've either been stung or because they fear that, or they might have serious medical complications if that happens, or mosquitoes that want to bite you. If the only interactions you have with invertebrates are when they are being a problem, then your default assumption, on the basis that your brain usually takes a whole bunch of shortcuts, it just kind of goes, don't like that, stripy and flying. And in some ways the hoverflies want you to think that because they're pretending to be a wasp. But just having knowledge, having an understanding of what these things actually are. So yes, wasps and bees, they can sting you, they don't want to. And I think sometimes people sort of start thinking, oh, they want to sting me. This is a dangerous animal. It's going to come at me. And it's like, you are a big weird tree that smells funny. They don't know what you are. You are baffling to them. Nothing about their lifestyle wants to interact with you. There are insects that do want to interact with you negatively as part of their lifestyle. Mosquitoes will bite you and it's rude, but not that many. How can you deal with mosquitoes biting you? I hoover them off my ceiling. I don't like being bitten by mosquitoes. I become extremely itchy. But you can do things like make sure there's not a lot of standing water around in your garden and buy some bug screens for your house so that they can't get in. They're not magic. They've got to come from somewhere. And they're not biting you out of spite. I find it annoying that they bite me. Mostly I find it annoying that they spit in you first. You could have just bitten me. It's fine. I have a lot of blood and you are very small, but no. My immune system is angry now. But it's a little bit how do you interact with these things? What are they actually doing? They don't care about you. A lot of people are afraid of spiders, and they are weird looking. They've got a lot of legs. They're very scuttly. There is possibility that there is a psychological shape in your brain that doesn't like things with too many leg, doesn't like things with not enough leg, as a sort of evolutionary shortcut. But just because it's there doesn't mean you have to be, you have to put up with it. We've learned that a lot of things that seem harmless are dangerous, and a lot of things that seem dangerous are not. We are used to dealing with other creatures you interact with. I have a cat. He bites me so much more frequently than any insect I have ever encountered, and I'm fine with this. A lot of it, I think, is that there isn't that knowledge. And I don't know when it sort of stops. For kids, there's a lot of, I do a lot of things with kids. I do pond dips, I do bug hunts, I do bio blitz type things. Kids love bugs. And then at some point they stop loving bugs. And I don't know whether that's just because it sort of falls out of the curriculum, like you stop having insects there, or if you have them there, it's only a few things. Like you'll look at butterflies for metamorphosis, and you'll look at the social hymenoptera for when you are considering, like, how do you end up with such a weird society with queens and workers and whatnot in comparison to mammals or birds or something like that. But you don't tend to have a lot of just going into what's happening with all these other insects. Like there's so many of these things. And then when you branch out even further and allow for the, the crustacea and the arachnids and the other things, like there is so many of these things, but a lot of our education focuses on vertebrates. That's fine. Vertebrates are quite interesting, but you're also not really going to interact with them. Like if there are random vertebrates around your house that aren't your pets, don't touch them. Most of the mammals shouldn't be out in the day, might be a problem. Like the birds don't want to interact with you anyway. Like you want to interact with the creatures. You want the things that for them, you are a landscape, like they're not bothered by you. At some point, we stop having that information about bugs. And I think that at that point, you sort of stop getting like, let's go on a bug hunt and start getting, oh, there's woodlice in the pantry. This is a problem. Or it's flies. They will be sick on your food. It's like, yes, they will. I mean, that's how they eat. They're not doing it out of spite. It's not like your neighbor being sick on your food. That's rude. Like if a fly is doing it, they just want some sandwich. You shouldn't let them have the sandwich. But that doesn't mean that they're doing it out of malice. But if you're only really being told about these things when they are dangerous or when they are problematic or when they are annoying, and never about the things that are, not even the ones that are helpful, because obviously, like we know about pollinators, those are helpful, but just things that are just there. Like I'll get the question, what does the shield bug do? It is a shield bug. It shield bugs about. It does shield bug things. It doesn't owe you a job. I mean, yes, I could talk about what they do as part of the wider ecology and how this fits into the ecology of your garden and all this kind of thing, but they don't owe you anything. They don't really have to do work. They could just be there. And I think at some point we stop talking about it, and then, you become a teenager and you become cool, or try to be cool, and it's maybe not cool to rootle around in a bush being delighted by ladybirds anymore. I thankfully was never cool, and now I'm 40, so like, I don't have to be cool in any capacity. It's brilliant. I can be the mad woman in the tree. No one will stop me. It turns out no one will actually stop you if you're 15, but, you're cool. But I didn't do very much about insects during my undergrad. I did quite a broad biology undergrad, but because I didn't do the animal behavior module, which as far as I'm aware is the only thing that really considered much in the way of insects, I didn't do much about insects in the first year. The second year, they were there as part of ecology and plant stuff. But once again, it was like, aphids, because you can't do plants without knowing about aphids. They're constantly biting them and giving them diseases. And then other than that, it was mostly, stuff about eusocial hymenoptera or the occasional thing about locust swarms. It wasn't everything else. It was just not there. And I did a specific master's in entomology, which does still exist. It's at Harper Adams University now. It's great for being able to just focus in on insects, but you focus in on insects and then it's not like you've narrowed your focus. You're suddenly like, oh, there's so many of these things and they do so much and they fit in with so many other elements of life. Like there will be insects that are related to pathology. There's insects that are incredibly economically important for farming. There's insects that are helping or hindering you in the garden. There's stuff that's all up in your walls. They are everywhere and they are doing so many different things. And at some point we stop looking at them. Like you're right, I do a lot of stuff with kids. One thing I want to start doing is stuff for older people as well. I did a youth group briefly for a while, then we ran out of funding. That wasn't specifically insect focused, but you've met me. It may not be specifically insect focused, but I will say things and it will start talking about bugs. But I want to do bug hunts for adults. Every person I've suggested this to, like, yeah, start at one pub, have a drink, walk to the next pub, pointing out the cool bugs on the way, pick up other people who are nearby and going, what are these strange people doing in the woods? And like just do a pub crawl where you also learn about wasps, or have like picnics or something like for that. There's also like the adult learning things. I have had stuff. I'm sorry, I realized that you asked me one question and I haven't stopped talking for 10 solid minutes. But like I get adults coming up to me when I'm doing stuff with the kids. So like, do you do sessions for essentially parents and grandparents? Because your kid is going to bring you a bug they found in the yard. How do you find out what that is? Even if you don't necessarily want to do a whole course on identification, like it's useful to know, is this something my child should be handling? And also what it is, because they're going to ask about it and they're going to want to know. And it's fun to learn. It's fun to find things out. And then, yeah, there's going to be something for you to have that conversation with. So that is something that I want to do more of, essentially. It's sort of like entomology brackets practical for families. And then entomology delighted. We used to do drunk moth trapping when I did my master's course. We'd just put up a big sheet, a load of lamps, a bunch of beer in the dark. Every time a moth landed, we would cheer, take a drink, and then take a photo of it and identify it the next day when we were hungover. Highly recommend.
Sounds great. Well, it's actually, when you were talking, I thought about it, and I thought, perhaps obviously there's the cool element. Maybe it's not cool to rootle around in a bush when you're 15, but also when you become like maybe a property owner or dweller, then maybe there's that shift in the mindset. And also if you start to garden, there seems to be this whole, and I'm sure it's very deeply psychologically rooted, but we get into this mindset of this thing is here to spite us. As you said, they're not there to spite us, but that a lot of people go, I've had this thing turned up in my garden and it's eating everything and I can't cope with it, and it's determined to eat my dahlias, or it's determined to do this. And it's like a war footing that people go to with bugs. So maybe that reaching out to the older audience is a very good thing. I was going to ask you, is there anything that we do that is particularly daft? Actually, I'm going to use the word because I see people doing things in their homes and gardens to eradicate pests, and I just think, what on earth are you doing? That's so unnecessary. But then also to kind of maybe put the positive spin on that, are there things that we could be doing that are really easy wins that would be good as well?
I mean, I think the easy wins all kind of come in the category that I would label stop being so much of a control freak, brackets, I am aware that I am a hypocrite in this. But as you say, when you own a home, you're like, oh no, suddenly I'm responsible for this. And things constantly go wrong with your house because, entropy is going to try and take it down. Things are going to go wrong with it. And sometimes for something going wrong with your house is like, it's easier to blame a bug that you have seen going about than it is to blame physics. Or like something that you can't see. Like I've had people sort of say, wood lice are eating my windowsills. My windowsills are made of wood. They're being destroyed by wood lice. They're not. It's just that, yes, the wood lice are eating your windowsills, but your windowsills have gone rotten first. The fungus has eaten your windowsills. The fact that your windowsills are not properly sealed and the damp has got in is killing your windowsills. The wood lice are just like, oh, brilliant, rotting wood. Gonna eat that. But because they are something that's, actively munching, it's easier to blame them for damaging your windowsill. And it's like, firstly, it's not fair to the woodlice, but it's also not going to solve your problem. You can treat the woodlice all you want. Your windowsill has still gone rotten. It's not their fault. I quite like to say all life is a chancer. Everything will take an easy meal if it's available. Everything will take something that's there for free. If you are maintaining your house or your garden, sometimes we remove so many of like the other things, the natural enemies or the things that would naturally be there, that of course it's easy to eat. We complain about how many pests brassicas get. For example, we have bred brassicas to contain so few defense chemicals because the defense chemicals are bitter and horrible, and if they get to a certain level of concentration, actually start getting toxic to humans. But okay, you have neutered this plant. It doesn't have any of the defenses that it would naturally have were it living in a hedge, as a tiny, weird, feral mustard. Of course things are going to want to eat it. You want to eat it, sometimes we get cross at creatures for using things that we're doing, but they don't know we're doing them. And even if they did, they're like, well, it's not looking, I'll have a go. It's sort of that working with nature rather than working against it. When you're gardening, we're not subsistence farmers. Gardening is a hobby. And I'm not saying gardening isn't important, and there are so many benefits. I am a gardener. I do weird things in the garden for science, and just, I will walk around in the night with a head torch on my head, picking up snails because I want to find out which one of the little darlings is eating my leaves. But it's a hobby. The pressures on you are that you're a bit stressed and a bit annoyed and you're irritated that you've wasted 20 quid or something and a bit of time. The pressures on the creatures that are eating your vegetables is life. It is life or death for them. They are out. They are in what we think isn't a wild environment. It is for them. They don't own this bit of land. They haven't planted those things. They are doing the things they need to survive. So yeah, sometimes you end up in a weird, fruitless war because the pressure on them is to live, and the pressure on you is what can I get done, at 5:30. I've wasted half an hour. And it's like, well, they're trying to survive. Sometimes this can help. Sometimes you just have to scream into a hole because you've put a lot of effort into something. And I'm not saying it's not disappointing, and I'm not saying it's not frustrating. I'm just saying that getting into a mindset that it's personal or that things are doing something quote unquote deliberately. It's yes, they are doing it deliberately, but not that sort of deliberately. It's nothing to do with you. And I think a lot of times we get very focused on controlling our environment. I must do this, I must do that, I must maintain this space in this particular condition. And you're constantly pushing against entropy. I was saying earlier, like I'm allergic to my house because I've got a dust allergy. You know what I could do? Hoover more frequently than I do. Do you know what I don't want to do? Hoover, because it's a pain. Like, in fact, I generally motivate myself to hoover because my cat has also got a dust allergy, and I feel bad when he is sneezing because he doesn't have the option to hoover. That's the thing I should have done. So, like, I will do that. Whereas, like, for me, I'll go outside and take an antihistamine or just be grumpy. We are constantly up against this idea that we have an ideal state for our environment to be in, which we either are never going to achieve because, physics says no, or like this is a constant Sisyphean task of like, this is a state that you are maintaining and you have to maintain it because it will turn into something else if you don't. If it's absolutely driving you up the wall, maybe reconsider the state that you want it to be in. And like for gardens and things are even more like that because obviously the inside of your house, it's dust and a few critters, whatever. But like outside, there is so much ecology, so much life going on. And if the more you sort of look at the outside and want it to not be the outside, like the more you want your garden to be a nice, neat room that just happens to have the sun coming into it directly, the more you're going to run into problems because other things want to live there and they're doing it 24 hours a day and you're not. It's rethinking what you want out of things. And that doesn't mean let it all go completely wild. That doesn't mean everybody has to have an eyebrow-high cube of brambles for a back garden. It's just sort of, where is it worth me putting my effort in and where is it not? And sometimes you're going to run up against things that you really wish you were able to do, but they don't actually work in your space in that kind of way. And at that point, sometimes you just got to take the L and just sort of decide you want to do something else. Like sometimes some plants, the population of things in I used to live in Brighton. Where I lived in Brighton, the snails were insane because Brighton is on chalk, so snails can build their shells really easily. It helps. It's one of the things. Like my garden was just full of snails, like an insane quantity of snails. I went a little bit mad one day, went out with a head torch on and collected nearly a shopping bag's worth of snails, which I then threw onto the roof of the nearby building for the seagulls to eat because I was very angry with the snails. But like, they're going to be there. Do I want to spend my life out in the darkness with a shopping bag full of snails? I mean, I could choose to do that if I want, but that is a decision I have made. What I would be better off doing is thinking, okay, what things can I grow under these conditions? What can I work with under these conditions? Because I don't have the energy to do the amount of pushing back against this environment that I would need to do in order to achieve this. It turned out what I actually ended up doing was moving to London, not because of the snails, it was an unrelated reason, but I got a whole new set of problems living in London. So there's always going to be problems, there's always going to be things. Choosing things that it's worth your battle and not worrying too much about the things that it's just not worth it. So that was me saying easy win. I mean, other easy wins is like some of these pushback stuff, like overuse of agrochemicals. Like if you are using insecticides to kill aphids, the insecticide company has won, nobody else. Aphids are born pregnant. Some of them can fly, some of them overwinter or hide as eggs that are resistant to pretty much everything. Yes, it will initially kill the aphids. It will kill everything else that might want to eat the aphids. It will kill the hoverfly larvae, the ladybirds, the lacewings, all the other creatures that might want to eat those aphids. And then the things that will be back next week is yet more aphids because you didn't kill the one pregnant aphid that was under a leaf and is busy just cloning children out of her bum in the last 7 days. So it's like, yes, you can do this, but was it worth it? A lot of these companies will also try and sell you products for problems you don't have. If you walk down the spray aisle, like the amount of things that would be like, oh, I've seen one for like, get rid of wood lice in your compost bin. Why? Do you want to keep the compost? Like, why would you not want the decomposers in the place where the decomposition happens? And things that just are there almost to scare people, like, oh, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, or there'll be huge problems. It's like, there won't though. It's fine. It's probably not going to be that. I mean, I'm not saying never using the chemicals, but really doing a more integrated pest management approach, a more like, is this actually going to help? Would it be an easier thing to put a little bit more effort in early in the season of like using mulches and a cold frame and some bags until the plant has got established? If you're growing a plant that is so fragile that everything in the garden at every point during its life is going to eat it, I would say stop growing that plant or grow that plant indoors. It's just not worth it. Get a big cardboard cutout of the plant at that point, So in terms of there is a lot of things that people will try and sell you. It is one of my things that I get quite cross about, and I want to have a talk that I am either going to title "The Good, the Bad, and the Impulse Buy" or "Free the Pine Cones," because there's so many things that people will try and sell you to help things in your garden or deal with problems in a way that either doesn't work or aren't real. The "Free the Pine Cones" thing is that you get a lot of bee hotels that have caged pine cones in there, or wood shavings in a bag or a box, and nothing that you want to be in a bee hotel uses these things. A bee hotel is entirely about tubes. If there's anything in a bee hotel that isn't tubes, it is not going to be helpful, and it'll get a spider in it. It's just not the thing. Because bee hotels are a thing, people will try and sell you a ladybird lodge, which is also not a thing, or a lacewing house, or they'll just pick an insect and sell you some insects. Some invertebrates have parts of their life cycle where they will need either a very specific sort of type of habitat, like for bees, for solitary bees, it's the tubes for the cavity nesters, and that they might return to it, which is kind of a house. Most things don't. Most things don't really have a homing thing. Most things don't need a house. Most things they just exist in the space. And someone tried to sell you a ladybird house, no, you might get a ladybird in it by accident, but they're not going in there. You'll get everything. You'll get earwigs and woodlice. That's what you'll get, which people then don't want. But it's you should be pleased with this. If you're making a little bug hotel, basically just piles of sheltered nooks and crannies, then be delighted that you've got millipedes and woodlice and earwigs and all these kind of things. Don't be cross with them for not being a ladybird. The ladybird's not going in there. It doesn't want to be in there. It's up on the plant eating the aphids you haven't sprayed. But there's also some things that just fundamentally don't work. One of my current favorite negative thing is people who will sell you a bag to attach to part of your house to scare wasps away. The logic behind this is wasps don't nest near other wasps. So if you put up a fake wasp's nest, the wasps won't come there. The part of this that is true is that wasps don't really want to nest near other wasps. They might start off nesting near other wasps, and then they will have a turf war until there is only one nest of wasps. They don't want to share. They also know the difference between a wasp's nest and a bag. They're very scent-based creatures, and also the bag nest isn't full of wasps, which are noisy. They know that's not a wasp's nest. They will also nest on top of old, dead wasps' nests. They won't go in because it's full of corpses and old poo, but they will absolutely build on top of it. And someone's just selling you a bag going, put this where you had a wasp's nest before and you won't get one. Well, you might not have got one this year anyway. It depends if the new wasp found it. What you've put there is a talisman against wasps. You'd be better off buying a wasp pendant and doing a weird dance. At least it would be entertaining and you'd have a piece of jewellery. You can get really expensive ones of these. Don't do that. This is not a thing. And I think other than me laughing and going off on a rant, I feel that some of these things that people have for sale, so the impulse buy section, things are preying on that people want to do something. People have a genuine desire to, put up a wasp nest so there aren't wasps there. Okay, well, you're not buying sprays. You're not doing some, YouTube-worthy video of you trying to use a can of Lynx spray and a match to try and flamethrower it off the ceiling. You're just going, I don't want the wasps to be there, so I don't have to deal with them. And okay, this won't help. What will help is when it's the wasp founding time in the first couple of months of spring, looking in places in your garden you don't want a wasp's nest, and if you see one, the little tiny single ball thing that's just the queen on her own, knock it off into a bag, leave it on the lawn, it'll be eaten by blackbirds, and she will go somewhere else and try again. She doesn't really want to nest somewhere where she's going to be in constant conflict with a giant, terrifying ape creature either. She just doesn't know. There's genuine things you can do, and then these things that you buy, people are buying them out of the goodness of their heart and out of positive intentions. They don't work. They can't work. They're disappointing. And if you don't really know why it hasn't worked, then it sort of tars everything else with the same brush. There's no point doing a thing for insects because it won't work. It's no, there's no point doing a thing that doesn't work because it won't work. You can do a thing that does work.
I think we've just got this innate drive to spend money and to try and buy to solve problems. That's my kind of theory on that.
Late stage capitalism ruins everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of that is that control thing, that idea that, like, I mean, factual, we can have such a massive impact on our environment. And this implication that just because we can sometimes do this, that this is a thing that we should always do, and that is positive. Like, a lot of what we're dealing with in terms of like conservation and like ecology and that kind of thing is trying to undo the massive impact that humans have had in the environment by not working with it, by kind of doing things that push against the environment. And then we're sort of realizing, oh, this is building up more and more problems for us than actually learning about how it works and doing it that way. So, like, calm down, just be less controlling. And I'm not great at philosophy. There are many philosophy people who will tell you how to calm down in various different ways, in various different flavors. For myself, I frame it as, can I be bothered to do this? And not in a negative way. I know what my energy levels are like. It's like, can I actually be bothered to continue doing this level of intervention to achieve this goal? Be honest, Linda. You know the bitch in charge, and she lies to you. I'm not going to be bothered. So I won't do it. And I do think that getting to know the insects helps. I got a question the other day from somebody who was saying, like, what's gardening like as an entomologist? Is it different? And it's sort of, probably, but also not. It depends. Like, I will be annoyed if a plant I want is eaten by caterpillars, but also the caterpillars at least quite interesting. It's like, it's not what I wanted, but this is, okay, why are you here? What are you? What other thing do you eat? Like, I grow brassicas. I also grow a vast and ridiculous number of nasturtiums, because every time I find a cabbage white, a large white, small white, either way, caterpillars on my brassicas, I'll go and look at them. You're like, frass or nibbling, there's some caterpillars. Scoop them into a little pot. There won't be that many. Even if they've laid loads of eggs, they're getting eaten by wasps and everything else. Scoop 20 caterpillars into a pot, put them on the nasturtiums. They'll eat those. They're not going to leave. They're not going to go all the way back. It's not worth it. When I've done my slightly mad going around with the head torch for snails, it's like, well, I could kill all the snails, underslugs, and then leave them out for other things. And I'm very much of the opinion, like, it's fine that sometimes you do need to, sometimes you need to kill things in order to, grow your vegetables or whatever. You should try and avoid it. If you're going to kill a slug, cut it in half. If you're going to kill a snail, crush it, because then something else will eat it. You haven't removed it from the food chain. You've just squished it, which you're probably going to do walking around your garden with your size 8s anyway. There's no point making it poisonous for the next thing. That's rude. But what I'm trying to do at the moment is basically just pick them all up and throw them in the compost bin, where they will actually do something useful. Sometimes I will be annoyed. I'm not like I sit there going, oh, wonderful aphids. I'm just like, oh, for goodness sake. But it is like, I know that if there are aphids all over the plants and the plants are starting to curl and the plants are starting to be damaged, it's like, have a look again. Are there mummies from parasitoid wasps? Can you see parasitoid wasps? Are there ladybirds somewhere else in the garden? Are there other things coming to handle this? And in some ways, it's like, well, I don't have to handle this. Sometimes you have to handle it. Sometimes there are just so many, and it's early in the year, and there's nothing coming. And you're like, well, I'm going to squash these now. But generally, getting a bit of joy out of these creatures as well. I mean, it does depend what I want. I'm annoyed if I don't manage to get food, if I don't manage to get a decorative thing, but I do get quite decorative caterpillars. You're like, well, I wanted a decorative thing, and now I'm enjoying things. This is fine.
Yeah, no, I get that. So if anyone wanted to kind of get in touch with you or sign up for your The Good, the Bad and the Impulse Buy talks and that sort of thing, where would they find you? How could they get hold of you?
I am sorting a website out. It's one of those things that it's on the list, but it's never the main thing on the list. But I've got Blue Sky, Instagram and Facebook under Dr. Linda. So it's either under LJBs or Dr. LJBs, depending on... My name is Linda Joy Birkin, so LJBs. I realise this makes less sense to people who aren't me, but I'm going with it. So LJBEES, and then it's or Dr. LJBES, depending on what was available when I signed up for it. So yeah, I've got, say, Blue Sky, Instagram and Facebook. At the moment, I will have an actual website soon that will have more things like lists of the kind of talks and sort of things that I do. I like doing talks in person, but I also have pretty experience on doing webinars, that kind of thing. So I'd be up for doing some more things like that as well. At the moment, I'm trying to staple together opportunities to do insect outreach into a job. So if anyone has any ideas and would like to pay me for shouting about bugs, please let me know.
Thanks to Linda for bringing the bug championing energy, and to you as well for listening. If you like this episode, you might also enjoy episode 244, The Biodiversity Gardener, and episode 322, Garden Wildlife Ponds.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.